I always figured if I got arrested at work, it would be for something cool like tackling a robber or setting a world record for fastest coffee pour, not for refusing to give a random woman free gas. Yet there I was, standing behind the counter at 9:42 a.m. on a Thursday, watching a woman with a "Freedom isn't free" bumper sticker dial 911 and tell them she was being held hostage by a minimum wage worker armed with a bad attitude. When the dispatcher asked if she was in immediate danger, Karen Holloway, bless her dramatic heart, screamed, "He's denying my human rights!" loud enough for the customers inside the store to duck for cover. That's how it all started. A simple note turned into a sheriff call, a Facebook Live disaster, and the single most ridiculous day of my life. It had begun like any other slow-burning shift at Marty's Gas and Go, with my best friend Jesse juggling 2 cups of burnt coffee while narrating the arrival of every single customer like a sports commentator. The station smelled like a mix of rubber tires and stale hot dogs, which, around here, was just part of the brand. Thursdays were cursed, we both agreed, since somehow all the weirdos decided to stop by right after morning rush hour. I was halfway through restocking the gum rack when the roar of an engine ripped through the parking lot and a battered gray minivan skidded to a stop across 2 handicapped spaces. Jessie poked her head out from the stockroom, eyes lighting up like Christmas morning. $5 says this one asks if the air pump is free, she said. I grunted. I wasn't in the mood for games. The driver's side door slammed open and out she came, clutching her oversized designer purse like a weapon. Karen Holloway was the kind of woman you could smell the entitlement on from across the lot, giant sunglasses perched on her forehead, phone already recording, lips pursed tighter than a jar lid screwed on by the Hulk. She marched inside like she owned the place, planting herself in front of the counter so aggressively that even the lottery scratch-off guy edged away. Pump 3. Fill it. Full tank. No, she barked, snapping her fingers. No greeting. No please. No card or cash handed over. I stared at her for a beat, waiting for the punchline. Sure, I said slowly. Just as soon as you pay. Her eyes widened like I just asked her to donate a kidney. Excuse me? She gasped. I'm a loyal customer. I always fill up here and settle later. Jessie let out a strangled laugh from behind the coffee counter, pretending to sneeze into a napkin. I wiped my hands on my apron and gave Karen my best fake customer service smile. Yeah, that's not a thing, I said. Cash or card before pump. Station policy. Karen's face flushed a deep, satisfying shade of maroon. She whipped out her phone and started recording. This young man, she announced, angling the camera like she was live from the war zone, is refusing to serve a woman in need. Discrimination. Pure discrimination. Mrs. Fletcher, a regular who came in every morning for scratch-offs and grape soda, leaned on the counter and muttered under her breath. Discrimination against stupidity ain't illegal, honey. Karen ignored her and kept filming. You think you're smart? She shrieked at me. You just wait. You have no idea who you're messing with. Oh, I've got a pretty solid idea, Jessie called over cheerfully. That's when Karen stomped back outside and, in a move that would later become the stuff of local legend, called 911. Through the window, we could see her pacing back and forth dramatically, one hand clutching the phone, the other gesturing wildly like she was directing traffic. Every few seconds she'd glance inside to make sure we were watching. Part of me was annoyed, but another part of me, the bigger part, was deeply entertained. Jessie popped a piece of gum in her mouth and grinned at me. $10 says it's Dave on duty today, she said. And he gives her the speech. The speech? I asked. Jessie smirked. The Karen sit-down speech. Classic. Sure enough, less than 10 minutes later, a squad car pulled up, lights flashing lazily in the mid-morning sun. Sheriff Dave, a local legend in his own right, stepped out. He was wearing mirrored sunglasses and the kind of expression that said he had absolutely no patience left for whatever circus act was about to unfold. Karen ran up to him, sobbing into her phone, and pointed at me like I was a wanted criminal. I crossed my arms and leaned back against the counter, already predicting the next 10 minutes of my life. Sheriff Dave sauntered inside, tipping an invisible hat to Mrs. Fletcher, who winked at him. "Morning," he said to me, voice low and gravelly. "Busy day?" "You have no idea," I said. Outside, Karen was still ranting at full volume. Sheriff Dave held up one finger to me, the universal sign for, "Give me a second," and wandered back out to hear her statement. We all pressed our faces against the window like kids at a candy shop. It was like watching bad theater. Karen gestured wildly at her car, mine being handcuffed, then clutched her chest like she was about to faint. Sheriff Dave listened patiently, nodding every so often, and then finally spoke, too softly for us to hear. Karen's jaw dropped. She stomped her foot. She waved her phone again. Sheriff Dave just kept talking, calm as a sleeping cat. Eventually, Karen threw her hands up in defeat and stomped back to her car, screeching tires as she peeled out of the lot without a single drop of gas. When Sheriff Dave came back inside, he shook his head and sighed. "You know," he said, taking off his sunglasses, "you really ought to start charging admission for the shows you put on here." Jessie leaned over the counter and whispered, "Did she really call 911 over gas?" Sheriff Dave grinned. "Said she was being economically oppressed." Mrs. Fletcher cackled so hard she dropped her scratch-offs. As the sheriff left, I realized two things. One, Karen wasn't finished with us yet, not by a long shot. And two, if this was just the beginning, the rest of the day was about to get way crazier. Sheriff Dave had barely pulled out of the parking lot before Jessie started a slow clap from behind the counter. I took a mock bow and tossed a pack of gum into the air, catching it with a flourish. It felt like we had dodged a bullet, but there was a buzzing in the air that told me the fight wasn't over yet. Karen's departure had been too loud, too dramatic, and way too unfinished for her to let it go. Jessie leaned in and whispered, "You think she's plotting in her minivan right now, or do you think she's already texting her Facebook cult?" I laughed but felt a small pit of anxiety open in my gut. In a town this small, reputations traveled faster than car engines could rev, and Karen Holloway had the unique talent of turning small inconveniences into national tragedies, at least in her mind. We didn't have to wonder long. 15 minutes later, just as I was wiping down the slushy machine and trying to scrape off what looked suspiciously like a melted gummy worm, a deep rumble of tires announced Karen's triumphant return. But she wasn't alone. This time, she brought backup. A second minivan, decorated with American flags and handwritten signs reading, "Justice for Karen," pulled into the lot behind her. Out tumbled 3 women in matching t-shirts that said, "Mama Bears United." Each of them was carrying a homemade protest sign, and one of them was filming the gas station on her phone like she was documenting a crime scene. Jessie nearly dropped the coffee pot she was holding. "Oh my God, she brought a flash mob," she whispered, horrified and thrilled at the same time. I wiped my hands on my apron and braced myself as Karen marched inside once again, this time brandishing a clipboard. "I am officially filing a formal complaint," she announced, slamming the clipboard onto the counter so hard that it made the cash register beep. "I have witnesses. I have video proof. I have a right to service." I tried my best to stay calm, but the absurdity of the situation was starting to wear down my last shred of patience. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "you refuse to pay. We cannot pump your gas unless you pay first. It's not personal, it's literally the law." Karen's eyes flashed with the fury of 1,000 entitled Yelp reviews. "This is about discrimination," she hissed. "You saw my car. You saw my political stickers. You judged me and refused to serve me because of my beliefs." Jessie snorted loudly enough to draw everyone's attention. Mrs. Fletcher, still scratching away at a lottery ticket at the window, shook her head and muttered something about idiots multiplying faster than rabbits. Karen turned back to her squad outside, waving her clipboard triumphantly. "He admits it! He admits discrimination!" she shrieked. One of her, Mama Bears, actually whooped like they were at a rodeo. I was starting to wonder if I had slipped into an alternate dimension where logic and facts had no meaning. As the mini-protest continued outside, Jessie leaned against the wall, chewing gum like she was watching daytime TV. "What's the over-under on how long before Dave comes back?" she asked. 15 minutes? 10? We didn't have to wait long. Sheriff Dave pulled up again, this time without the sirens, but with a look that suggested he was seriously considering early retirement. He walked inside, tipped his hat at Mrs. Fletcher again, and sighed deeply. "All right," he said, rubbing his temples. "What's the situation this time?" Karen shoved her phone into his face, the screen flashing a grainy video of me standing behind the counter, looking vaguely bored while she screamed about her rights. "I have footage," she declared. "Footage of this man refusing to provide essential services. I demand a citizen's arrest." Sheriff Dave stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he turned to me. "You threaten her?" "Nope," I said. "Physically assault her?" "Nope." "Hold her against her will?" "Nope. In fact, she left twice." Sheriff Dave scratched his chin thoughtfully, then turned back to Karen. "You want him arrested for refusing to give you free gas?" Karen stomped her foot again. "It's about principles," she screamed. "I am a taxpayer." Jessie, unable to contain herself, whispered loudly, "Someone get her a gold medal for bravery." Sheriff Dave ignored her and asked Karen flat out if she had paid for the gas she wanted. When she admitted, rather proudly, that she hadn't, Dave shook his head like a disappointed dad. "Ma'am," he said, "this isn't a civil rights violation. It's not even a criminal case. It's you throwing a tantrum because you didn't get what you wanted." Karen turned redder than a fire hydrant. "I will not be spoken to like this," she barked. "I will be contacting my lawyer." Sheriff Dave shrugged. "Go ahead. Meanwhile, I'm issuing you a citation for misuse of emergency services. And I suggest you leave before you rack up more." Karen grabbed the clipboard, spun on her heel, and stormed out of the store, her mini-army following close behind, still filming everything as if they were going to uncover some hidden government conspiracy at the gas and go. Jessie watched them go, shaking her head in disbelief. "Well," she said, popping another bubble of gum, "that's not gonna be the end of it." She was right. Before the sun set that evening, Karen had uploaded her shaky Facebook video, tagging it with dramatic captions like, "Assaulted at gas station," and "Boycott Marty's." Within an hour, the video had dozens of shares from people who either thought she was the next Rosa Parks, or just loved a good train wreck. Some commenters praised her bravery. Others, clearly from town, posted laughing emojis and inside jokes that made it clear everyone knew exactly who Karen Holloway was. By the time my shift ended, my phone had blown up with texts from friends sending me screenshots and memes. Someone had even made a parody account called Karen Gaslight Holloway, posting fake testimonials about how she had once demanded free Wi-Fi at a Blockbuster that had been closed for 10 years. I thought maybe the whole thing would die down by the next morning. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would realize how ridiculous she looked and move on to harassing the local grocery store instead. But as I climbed into my car and pulled away from the station, I noticed something that made my stomach sink. Karen was parked across the street, engine idling, lights off, just sitting there like a villain in a low-budget horror movie. Watching. Waiting. Plotting. I had a terrible feeling this was only the beginning. The next morning, I pulled into the parking lot feeling like a soldier heading into enemy territory. I had barely stepped out of my car when I noticed the first sign something was wrong. Taped to the front door of the gas station, written in red glitter marker on a torn piece of poster board, was a handwritten sign that read, "Boycott Marty's, Justice for Karen." It was crooked, fluttering in the breeze like a sad flag of war. Jessie was already inside, sipping her third coffee of the morning and grinning like she had front-row seats to the apocalypse. She raised an eyebrow as I walked in. "Congratulations," she said deadpan. "You're officially famous. Half the town's Facebook feed is nothing but you and Karen memes." I dropped my keys onto the counter and groaned. Please tell me she got bored and went home to terrorize a grocery store. Jessie shook her head and slid her phone across the counter toward me. On the screen was a live stream video with the caption, "On location at the scene of the crime." In the video, Karen stood across the street with a handful of equally angry-looking women, waving handmade signs and yelling at passing cars. "They've been there since sunrise," Jessie said. "One of them tried to throw a bag of dog poop at the door earlier but missed and hit her own windshield." I laughed despite myself, but the feeling was short-lived. Karen's little protest wasn't just for show. Within an hour, a couple of local busybodies wandered into the store, pretending to browse while sneakily filming everything on their phones. A woman pretending to shop for windshield wipers loudly asked Jessie if the fascist was working today. A guy in a tie-dye shirt tried to bait me into an argument about free enterprise. Jessie handled it the way she handled everything, with relentless sarcasm and free coffee samples, but the tension was thick enough to taste. It only got worse when two men in cheap suits marched through the door, flashing homemade badges that looked like they were printed on a library printer. "We're from Consumer Protection Agency," the taller one said, puffing out his chest. "We're here to investigate allegations of service denial and harassment." Jessie snorted so loudly that the shorter guy actually jumped. I folded my arms and stared at them. "Let me guess," I said. "Karen sent you?" They exchanged a guilty glance, which told me everything I needed to know. Jessie leaned across the counter, smiling sweetly. "Well, you'll be happy to know," she said, "that all complaints here must be filed according to corporate policy." She pulled a crumpled piece of paper from under the register and handed it over. "Section 3. Any official complaint must be accompanied by a ceremonial duck dance. No dance, no complaint. Company rules." The two men blinked at her. "Eh, what?" the short one asked. Jessie nodded solemnly. "Mandatory duck dance. It's all there in the fine print." I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from laughing as Jessie demonstrated, flapping her arms and quacking loudly enough that Mrs. Fletcher dropped her grape soda from laughing too hard. The two fake investigators mumbled something about checking with their supervisor and shuffled out of the store as fast as their cheap loafers could carry them. For a few blessed minutes, the store was peaceful again. Jessie and I celebrated with slushies, toasting each other with brain-freezing enthusiasm. But the peace was shattered when my boss, Marty himself, showed up. His face was redder than a lobster in a tanning bed, and the second he stormed through the door, I knew we were in trouble. Marty wasted no time laying into me. "What the hell is going on?" he barked. "I've got the Chamber of Commerce calling me, people threatening to boycott, my insurance agent leaving me voicemails about liability." I tried to explain, calmly and rationally, that Karen was orchestrating a one-woman campaign of chaos, but Marty didn't want to hear it. All he cared about was the bottom line. "Fix it," he snapped, "or you're suspended until further notice." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Suspended. Over this insanity. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm, but it felt like the walls were closing in. Karen's plan was working. She was winning. Jessie looked furious on my behalf but stayed quiet as Marty stomped back out, slamming the door so hard that the wind chime by the register fell off its hook. I sat down heavily behind the counter, staring at the floor. Jessie perched next to me, sipping her slushy thoughtfully. "You know," she said slowly, "if Karen wants a war, maybe it's time we gave her one." I looked at her, half expecting another crazy prank idea, but Jessie's eyes were sharp and serious. "Not stupid pranks," she said. "Smart ones. We stay clean. We stay polite. But we expose her nonsense for the whole town to see." I wasn't sure what she had in mind yet, but I knew one thing: sitting back and doing nothing wasn't going to save my job. Karen had declared war. And it was time we stopped playing defense. As if on cue, a car horn blared outside. Karen was standing across the street again, bullhorn in hand, shrieking about boycotts and discrimination and something about conspiracy at the gas pumps. A small crowd had gathered, a mix of confused passers-by and a few people clearly just there for the entertainment. I spotted Sheriff Dave parked a few blocks down, sipping coffee and watching it all unfold with the detached amusement of a man who had seen too much to care anymore. Jessie leaned over and grinned. "First move," she said. "We invite the mayor. Let him see this circus with his own eyes." I blinked. "You can just invite the mayor?" Jessie shrugged. "Small town. I went to high school with his niece. I'll text her." It was a ridiculous idea. It was a long shot. It was borderline insane. And it just might work. I nodded slowly, feeling a spark of hope for the first time that day. "Let's bring the whole town to the party." Jessie clinked her slushy cup against mine. Operation Expose Karen had officially begun. By the time the mayor's black SUV pulled into the parking lot, the scene outside Marty's Gas and Go had fully mutated into a three-ring circus. Karen stood front and center, clutching her bullhorn like it was a lifeline, yelling a mix of slogans and random conspiracy theories to a growing crowd of rubberneckers. Some of the onlookers genuinely thought they were witnessing a political protest. Others were there just for the laughs, filming the spectacle with their phones and posting live updates to the town's Facebook group. Jessie and I stood behind the counter, hearts pounding, as we watched Mayor Hodges climb out of his car, adjust his jacket, and stroll toward the commotion like a man walking into a lion's den with nothing but a toothpick. Mayor Hodges was a tall, silver-haired man who somehow always looked like he had just won a golf tournament. He surveyed the scene with narrowed eyes, taking in the signs, the yelling, the chaos. Karen, seeing an opportunity for attention, charged at him full speed, waving her clipboard and screeching into her bullhorn about oppression, injustice, and how our gas station was ground zero for the death of American freedom. To her credit, she managed to deliver a 5-minute monologue without once pausing for breath. Mayor Hodges let her finish, then calmly held up a hand. Karen beamed, clearly thinking she had found a powerful ally. "Finally!" she cried. "Someone in authority who can bring justice!" The mayor smiled politely and said, "Karen Holloway, right?" Her face lit up even brighter. "Yes. I'm leading the resistance against these oppressors," she cried, pointing at the gas station like it was an enemy fortress. The mayor chuckled softly, the sound dry and humorless. "Karen," he said in a voice that carried easily over the crowd, "weren't you the one who got banned from the farmers' market last summer for threatening to sue over the price of heirloom tomatoes?" A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Karen's smile froze. "And if I recall correctly," the mayor continued, "you tried to have the Christmas parade cancelled because you said Santa Claus was a tool of government propaganda." The laughter grew louder. Phones came up, recording every word. Karen's face turned a deep, furious red. She opened her mouth to argue, but the mayor wasn't finished. "Folks," he said, turning to the crowd, "this gas station has been part of our town for 20 years. I personally know the owner. I know the employees. And I know that whatever Karen is accusing them of today, it has less to do with discrimination and more to do with her personal hobby of creating chaos wherever she goes." There was a pause, a charged silence, and then someone in the crowd started clapping. Others joined in. Within seconds, the street was filled with the sound of people applauding, cheering, some even whistling. Karen looked around in horror, realizing the tide had turned completely against her. She tried to rally her Mama Bear supporters, but even they were starting to back away, suddenly very interested in their shoes or their phones. One of them muttered something about having to pick up her kids and bolted. Karen turned back to the mayor, wild-eyed. "You can't do this!" she shrieked. "I have rights! I have proof!" The mayor smiled again, that same calm, devastating smile. "By all means," he said, "take your evidence to court. I'm sure the judge would love to hear how you were discriminated against for not wanting to pay for gasoline." Karen stood there trembling, her clipboard shaking in her hand, but she said nothing. No speech, no rallying cry, nothing. Slowly she turned, stomped back to her van, and slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Jessie let out a breath she must have been holding for 5 minutes. "Holy crap!" she whispered. I think we just witnessed a public execution. And it was beautiful. I couldn't even speak. I just leaned on the counter, weak with relief and adrenaline, watching as Karen peeled out of the parking lot one final time, her tires screeching and a trail of glittery protest signs fluttering in her wake. The mayor wandered into the gas station and gave us a nod. You kids handled yourselves well, he said. Small towns remember stuff like this. Then he bought a pack of gum and left like he hadn't just completely annihilated the biggest source of drama our town had seen in months. Word spread fast. Within hours, the Facebook outrage posts disappeared one by one, replaced by memes and jokes at Karen's expense. Someone photoshopped her face onto a gas pump with the caption, Public Enemy Number 1. Another person posted a mock GoFundMe called, Fill Karen's tank so she'll leave town. The entire town was buzzing, and for once, it wasn't about me being the villain. It was about how ridiculous Karen had made herself look. By the end of my shift, Marty showed back up, looking sheepish and awkward. He cleared his throat and mumbled something that sounded vaguely like an apology before sliding a crisp $50 bill across the counter. For the trouble, he said gruffly. And for not making it worse. I didn't exactly forgive him, but I took the money. A win was a win. Later that night, Jessie and I sat on the curb outside the station, sipping sodas and watching the stars come out. You know, she said thoughtfully, we should throw an award show. Best meltdown. Best dramatic performance. Best fake investigators. I laughed so hard I almost choked. Best use of a bullhorn in a public embarrassment, I suggested. Jessie raised her soda can in a mock toast. To surviving Karen, she said. And to never having to explain basic capitalism to a grown adult ever again. I clinked my can against hers, feeling lighter than I had in days. The fight was over. The war had been won. And if another Karen ever wandered into our station demanding free gas, well, at least now we had a playbook for how to handle it. It wasn't the adventure I had asked for. But it was definitely the one I would be telling stories about for the rest of my life. And deep down, I had a feeling Karen wouldn't be showing her face around town for a very, very long time.